All right. Good morning, Doug. We are back with questions from members of our File. File is our private member group where we help people plan for the chaos that's coming, both financially and personally. So if you'd like to find out more about that, go to file.co. There's a link in the description to this video. First off, Doug, there's a question from Nick, who talks about, he says, the indictment of Trump has happened. We debated that last week, whether or not it would. It did happen. Would you say this hurts the US dollar in the long run and strengthens the BRICS position? The USA was once a beacon of liberty, prosperity, and ultimately stability. Yet now things are getting very strange.
Well, it hurts the perception of the U.S. as being a free country. It doesn't hurt the dollar per se. What hurts the dollar per se is printing up more of them. And I'm not sure anybody's going to dump the dollar just because they can see that the U.S. is becoming more corrupt. So that's not exactly, I don't think that's exactly the right question. But you were right, Matt. It turned out I was right initially, then you were right.
I was sure you were right. I was like, man, he got me again.
Yeah, but the problem is I really underestimated the stupidity of the enemy party. Well, they're both enemy parties, of course, but this has got to be like, well, we'll see what works out. It's asking for trouble, but will trouble materialize? Maybe. I always like to look at the bright side of things. And maybe the fact that 25% of the population of the US is on psychoactive drugs to make them semi-zombies, maybe nobody will care in the long run. Nobody's going to react against it. What are you going to do to react against it? Go out and, scream and shout and rant and rage?
Well, it hasn't worked well so far. So, I mean, just put people in jail for a long time. Yeah, that's, I mean, my only real worry with it is that it does provoke a kind of response from people, from fans of his, and they get themselves in trouble, which gives the state, justification for more draconian laws. I mean, that's what I worry about.
But on the other hand, this type of thing happens in Latin America all the time, where the ex-president is indicted and put in jail.
Lula, like the new president of Brazil, was in jail.
Yeah, exactly. This happens all the time with all these countries, and the society still exists. Life still goes on. So it's a pity, because the reason it's a pity is because America, the idea, the concept of America really was unique and really was better than any of these other nation states. But now we're devolving into, just another crappy nation state like the rest of them. So
just another banana republic.
That's all. Get used to it.
Okay. Next question is from Vito. He says he just finished your 3 novels from the Charles Knight series. He says, really love them. And I'll put a link to these novels if you guys haven't seen them yet, so you can go check them out. Encourage you to read them. He says, I really loved them with all the Doug's messages within them, kind of buried within them. He says, I usually no longer read modern fiction, as 99% are a waste of time, but these were really insightful and fun. Thank you. He says, and he said he has some of your future other book recommendations you said you've given before lined up to read next. His question is, did you actually write the 3rd one with the masks and social distancing before it was actually happening?
Well, rather than getting into any plot line discussions, I co-authored those with my friend John Hunt, and we have 4 more novels planned. Whether they're going to get written or not is a different question. One of the problems that we're confronting is that these novels were supposed to be near-term science fiction, kind of, starting out with the Pilgrim's Progress of our young hero, Charles Knight, who goes off to Africa to investigate the cause of his recent good luck in the mining market. But the political situation and the technological realities in the world are evolving so fast that it is really hard now to write credible near-term fiction. because we've got to project this out to the time where, Charles is going to get older as he advances through these next 4 novels, which will be more radical and I think more interesting than the first 3, assuming we write them. So it's a good question. It's a problem. Don't know how we're going to solve it. I guess the answer is yes, kind of.
What? And when I think assassin is the one he's talking about, and I think the big thing is that I think if I recall, you'd written a big portion of the book before the pandemic, kicked off.
Yeah.
But then you made some revisions and wrapped and quit and maybe got really motivated to get wrapped up and incorporated those things. So when you were reading this, when I was reading it, I guess it was in late 2020. I think it was late 2020 when it came out, maybe. Is that right?
We published that book. I should look at the book and see exactly when we put it. I'm sure it was out before the pandemic started.
No, because it had all COVID stuff in there, basically. I mean, very similar to it. I don't know, maybe, but maybe you did.
This is so funny. I don't keep a diary, and a lot of this stuff gets lost in the mists of history. I'll ask John. He's much more.
Am I having like one of those Mandela effect moments, where, you remember something differently than it actually happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. The mind tricks itself. Part of that is a result of the mind tricks itself more and more as we watch more electronic stuff, which isn't real, but seems real. So it imprints itself on your mind and you wonder what really is real.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I'll look up the release date of this book so we know, but if you haven't read this series, we encourage you to do it. Sure.
I don't fall behind because I think Terrorist is going to be quite good. That's the next one. And then after Terrorist is Warlord. And then it gets really serious after Warlord. So,
it gets serious.
Yeah. So keep your breath bated, kids.
Excellent. All right. Question from Paul. He says, how many members of our private file do you think might be undercover agents looking for, quote, extremists that need, quote, re-education? And would you be disappointed if the actual number of undercover agents were 0?
Oh, I wouldn't be disappointed at all. I'd be so happy. We just don't know to what degree these Praetorian agencies, which, they infest everything. They're like bed bugs and cockroaches. They're everywhere at this point. And of course, there are more of them to be everywhere, is evidenced by the fact that the regime is hiring 87,000 new IRS agents. This is an incredible number. And all these agencies, of course, are going to want to increase their budget and employee roles similarly. And I'm sure with the 87,000 new IRS operatives out there, they're going to be assigned new things to expand the franchise of the IRS. This is very, very bad news. So do we have any of these people from, well, I guess with AI, there might be a bot who looks real that's there.
Yeah, certainly could be.
At some point, but I don't know, and I don't care because we don't do anything.
Well, I do talk about my tomato garden sometimes in the file, Doug, and stuff like that. So I don't know, they might be interested.
But might you be breeding poisonous tomatoes to poison government agents? That is something that might be asserted.
Does botulism come from tomatoes? Is that right?
Well,
I think so.
I think we can make that rumor up, couldn't we?
Everything is suspect in this world, I think. Okay.
And the fact that that's a reasonable question to ask tells us where the world is going. Anyway, I haven't gotten any midnight knocks at the door. Well, it's not midnight. They're dawn raids is what they specialize in typically. I haven't had one yet. So then again, I'm in Uruguay. And when I go back to the US in June. Yeah, it might be something that I might think about. Well, we probably got some time. Yeah, serious
An amazing
question.
thing, and all your only real crime would be like, is just simply saying that you don't agree with the bullshit narratives that are being spoon fed to you.
Yeah, but then if they ask me, are you an enemy of the state? I'd have to say, well, as a matter of fact, I am.
I sure feel like it. You guys, why am I here? Why are you doing this to me?
Exactly.
You
So,
defined it.
Yeah, if I answer, of course, you don't owe anybody the truth. That's a whole separate, interesting discussion, is the nature of truth and to what degree do you owe other people and which other people the truth. But if somebody asks me, am I an enemy of the state? I say, yeah, of course I am. Aren't you?
Yeah, I think you have to say that.
You have to. I mean, it's the most
it's
the most evil thing in reality. It's worse than cancer stalking humanity.
I think the thing I don't like with that phrase is I just associate it as their word for it. You know what I mean?
Their word.
Their word is, that's what they refer to. That was what they refer to the bad apples as. And some reason I just don't like accepting that label. You know,
that's a good
I think
point.
that's why I'm having the trouble.
That's a good point. Yeah,
clearly I identify them as the greatest danger to humans on Earth. There's no doubt about it. To good people everywhere, the state is always the greatest risk, always.
Well, one thing that leftists have always done very well is turn everything on its head, turn everything upside down, make a liberal, a statist, and reversing the meaning of words and the intention of words. No, I don't mind. Yeah, it's their phrase, but I don't mind.
Okay. That was my hesitation, though. For some reason, I just like that label. I don't like the labels.
Yeah. Well,
it's reasonable.
I
looked at your
something.
I was gonna say, I looked at your book, and the Assassin Quarter, at least the Kindle edition, came out on October 10th, 2020.
Huh. Okay. And
it was, so there wasn't a vaccine yet. It's definitely
COVID blossomed in March, really, or a little bit before, perhaps. Huh?
Yep. And that's how I think you guys, like, you went back and incorporated all these things. And I remember when that's why I associated with the fall of 2020, because I remember reading it I guess at that time, and I was shocked at how well you'd incorporated what was happening around me right then into the book at that time.
I think the book, I'll ask John. John will know exactly what happened.
It was amazing.
He keeps track of these things. I don't. But no, we didn't go back and add stuff in.
Really? That's amazing. Amazing. Okay. All right.
Subject confirmation by John, because he's not only
he's the official scribe. He keeps the records.
Yeah, he does.
Okay. Let's see. Sorry, my dog's giving me a hassle. Want to get up on the desk.
Oh, where's my dogs?
Whoops. This is
damn, you've got a dog and my dogs are not on the scene. Okay.
Well, they're usually right there. So,
usually, but not today. I'll have to conduct an investigation after this interview.
Very disappointed in you. Okay, so let's see. Next question. With the way the West is agitating China and Russia, I'm thinking of moving strategically to another location. In the medium to long term, I'd like to be producing real goods, robotics, marine, and mechanical. I think the UK, where I am now, and the US is on target to be as popular as a fart in an elevator. If it becomes challenging to buy materials in the West and trade with other countries, what would be a good place to live for trading and or producing physical goods? At this moment, I am working from a laptop, mostly coding, but not everyone can be doing this. Where would Doug be recommend living if he were producing physical goods?
Well, almost every country in the world is headed in the same direction, and it's a bad direction, including places that are desirable to live in. Canada, New Zealand, Australia, the US. Of course, you can get out into the boondocks in any of these places and you're left kind of relatively alone. But, forget about Brazil now. That place is going off the deep end again. Chile, forget about Chile. Uruguay is still kind of okay. It's backward. You can do whatever you want here, more or less, for the moment. So where do you go? I'll tell you something interesting. When we were talking the other day, did we mention Ragnar Benson or Larry
not.
Brown? Okay, this is
No.
interesting because in the days when I put on the Eros Society, which was for 30 years, and we had extraordinary, really well-known people that were famous for having done something that came to that in Aspen. One of the guys that came to it a number of times used the pen name Ragnar Benson. And Ragnar was a pen name of a individual. I won't use his name. That I met through another friend of mine, Peter Lund. Peter used to be a partner of Robert Brown, who founded
Soldier of Fortune, yeah.
Exactly. They founded
Yeah.
it together. And then they decided to split up the enterprise, where Brown took Soldier of Fortune and Peter took Paladin Press. And okay, because Peter was a bibliophile, ex-special forces guy like Brown. That's how they met each other. But anyway, so one of his friends, one of Peter's friends that he published his books, lots of books, look up Ragnar Benson and you'll find books on really pretty outrageous and interesting topics. So anyway, for some reason, just a few days ago, I said, whatever happened to my friend? I don't call him Ragnar because that's his pen name. And looked him up, and he still got an FFL. That made it easier for me to find him. I called him. And
That's that guy. That's that guy.
Huh?
Okay. I think you asked me about him. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
So anyway, I put in a call, and I got a call back a couple of days later. And so we were just catching up and talking about, this is going to be relevant to answering the question, incidentally, this preamble I'm giving you. So I said, so where you been? He said, well, we've been traveling around and went to the Falkland Islands. Well, I said, well, that's interesting because the Falkland Islands are not so far from where I am, but you can't get there from here. So I said, what did you do? Fly in from Chile, which is how you go to the Falkland Islands. It's about the only way you can get to the Falklands. And it's very interesting. So Ragnar said, yeah, we spent like 2 weeks there and got to know everybody and made lots of lifelong friends. And it was great and blah, blah, blah. It was wonderful. Now, to answer the question, where can you go? You know what? The Falkland Islands, absolutely crappy weather. Okay. I mean, you're talking about next stop, Antarctica. And it's an island, but the place is booming, apparently. A lot of capital has flown into it, since the Falklands War, which is 40 years ago. It's unbelievable. And I think if, of course, they have these gigantic oil deposits around there, which will change everything and probably ruin everything for them. But, if you're looking for a weird place to be where they speak English, and in a place like that, people tend to be very self-sufficient, and very mechanical, and surprisingly intellectual, which is what my friend said also, because they read books. And at some point, a huge amount of wealth is going to devolve upon people that are Falkland residents. I mean, if you like the other constraints of living there, and there are definite constraints, I think that's worth investigating. So there's a weird recommendation, firsthand, boots on the ground, from somebody that thinks like us that was just there. I spent 2 weeks, and yeah, Falkland Islands. I don't know if I'm going to go
That's
there.
interesting.
But,
I'd like to go check it out actually sometime.
oh
I'd like to
yeah,
see it.
it'd be worthwhile. I'm really tempted. Could
Yeah.
fly to Chile and then catch the weekly
It's from
flight.
Santiago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's worth it. I'd like to check it out because it is a weird in between place, that's like has its own distinct identity that almost it has it only because of the tension between the UK and Argentina. You know what I mean? Like it would normally just be absorbed by the Borg somewhere, but somehow it is allowed to exist in its own weird way. I guess a lot of
Yeah.
British protectorates kind of do that way, but
Mhm.
so among Ragnar's books, there is new and improved C4, better than ever recipes for half the money and double the fun.
That's typical, right?
There's a lot of good ones like that. So acquiring a new ID, how to easily use the latest computer technology to drop out, start over, and get on with your life. Not sure these things be as easy to do today as they were when they were published, but still give you a sense of who he is.
Yeah, that's exactly who he is. So look up Ragnar, but it'll be hard to get some of his books like C4 because those are being quashed.
Yep. Tough to get those. Okay, let's see. The second part of the question is if you're familiar with Joel Skousen's strategic relocation book. And as this guy's actually talking about a video that he did with Alex Jones, but I imagine you know Joel. And if you have any opinion of his books and his belief on where the best place to be is and all that.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I know Joel. He's not well, but he's Mark Skousen's brother, of course. I'm not sure he's the person to. I'm not sure he's traveled that much. He was a Mormon missionary, which means I think in his case, he speaks good Spanish, been to some Latin American country. I don't know much. I mean, I've seen some of his recommendations, not crazy about him. I don't think Alex knows anything about foreign countries, really. So I don't know. I think there's better sources.
Yeah, I agree. I read his book, giant book, and I had I disagreed with a lot of his assessments of it. It seems like he's also stuck in this very limited Cold War mentality that the ultimate catastrophe really comes down to nuclear winter, and that, and like all the related things to that. But the primary thing is making sure you've got a house with a basement. I mean, that's like first and foremost on his list, so that you can withstand the fallout. It really is. That's top of the heap. So and he used to like Uruguay and then turned against it. Actually, and when I heard his argument against it, and it was, I can't recall what it was, but it seemed very superficial. So, in any case, so next, the thinking process he has with stuff is kind of interesting. But let's see, next question. For someone that has been sitting with a large cash position, what would you recommend they do with that, given the banking situation? Leaving in the banks, is that safe?
Well, holding a large cash position itself is questionable. If you have a lot of cash, is he talking about cash, like $100 bills? We don't know.
I think in the bank. So in the bank. Yeah.
Well, look, you probably don't have enough gold coins. You probably don't have enough silver coins. So do that. And rather than sitting on cash, there's better places to put your money. There's very interesting stocks in the oil and resources fields that are yielding 8 to 10% in current dividends. And I think they're going to be yielding more and they're going to go up. So there's a value to having cash, but it sounds like you're overloaded with cash.
Yep.
Probably not a good idea.
Yeah. Okay, good. If you want more information on some of the specific recommendations, they're in file as a pro or VIP member. So let's see. Next question from Igor. He says, what's Doug's opinion of Robert Greene and his books like Mastery and 48 Laws of Power? Are you familiar with him and those books?
I'm not. Have you read them?
No, I have them. So I just they're basically, he basically tries to break down, well, like the 48 laws of power is one of those famous ones. He says these are the traits of the powerful, like these are their characteristics, and he uses historical examples and says, this is how Machiavelli did it. It's what he really meant by it, and basically instructs one on how to, adopt that approach in their life. And, I love his historical references. Honestly, I find him very difficult to read, though. I don't think he's a very good actual writer. I think it's probably just my preference for reading it. So I have his books. I have, I think, 4 of his books. Probably only read a total of maybe 200 pages of anything he's written.
Okay. Well, that's more than I knew and 60 months ago.
Right. So let's see. If he was that good of an author, you would have heard about him. Let's put it that way. Let's see. Next one. If you could design your own school curriculum today, which subjects and concepts would be top of your list to equip the next generation for the future?
Good question, and one that I've thought about a lot. And you and I have talked about this quite a bit in the past. And I decided that the only way to get this done, since I've got a lot of other things that I want to do, including just goof off, and I've become increasingly lazy, it's that I've thrown some money at the subject. And hopefully, within the next year, I will have put out a book, which I will write myself after somebody does all the legwork for me, which I don't want to do anymore. It'll be called something on the order of Renaissance Man, How to Be, Do, and Have Everything You Want. Kind of book that I wish somebody given me when I was in late grade school or high school. I wouldn't have gone to college, that's for sure. Or even read earlier to help crystallize my thoughts. And it would be a theory of education, what you ought to do and where you ought to go and the whole thing. Because people just don't think about these things. I mean, they basically do what I did. I mean, I was more adventurous than the average bear, perhaps, but would have helped so much if I'd had a little bit of direct. Anyway, I'm going to write a book about this, which will be out, and it'll be a good book because I don't like to release anything that I don't think is good. It'll be out in the next year with some luck.
So we'll save the answer to that until the book is released. We can talk about it then. Okay. Yeah. Excellent. I'm very happy you're doing that, as you know. Let's see. Next one is from Dennis. He says, in Doug's opinion, where did the USA and the West go wrong? Can you pinpoint a time in our recent history that was the beginning of the end, so to speak? One could certainly argue that the creation of the Fed in 1913 was one of those times for the United States, but was it the one? Was it the big one?
Well, okay, recent history, creation of the Fed, 1913, creation of the income tax, coincidentally, the same year.
Weird how they're almost combined, like they had to exist together to be possible.
Yeah. Well, how the hell else are you going to finance World War I unless you can print money and tax the citizens? And of course, that was one war the U.S. had absolutely no business joining into.
It wasn't a righteous war, Doug?
It wasn't a righteous war. In fact, he wasn't the first president this sort of happened to, but the citizenry, instead of running around like hooting and panting like chimpanzees, to be the first to go over there, can't wait to go over there and teach those nasty Huns. Wilson should have been strung up by his heels like Mussolini. So yes, I would say that 1913 is as good a time as to pick when the cultural decline started. But it's a long decline, but now it's becoming obvious and accelerating. So
yeah,
1913, yeah, that's pretty good. I wonder, and of course the Roosevelt regime, that was disastrous, and the Johnson regime, not only with his Vietnam War, but his Great Society. I mean, I
And
would
Lincoln
say
before that, maybe we wouldn't have been the empire at all if if secession were possible.
maybe not. I'd say Johnson was, whoops, wish for a dog, which I did earlier, and a mass of them appear. They boil out of somewhere. I'd say Johnson was the most overt criminal of all the recent presidents that we've had. I mean, just a horrible human being. And they're all horrible. I mean, was Bush worse than Obama? Well, he may well have been as much of a criminal as Obama was. I mean, none of these people are any damn good at all.
Okay. Let's see. Next question here is, what is the individual to do when the majority of governments adopt their own versions of the Restrict Act? That's that thing we covered the other day. The law that's pending. It says John Robb discussed network warfare before. How much of this is caused by the network or enabled by the nefarious actors to gain a desired outcome?
Well, are we referring to the deep state, so-called?
I guess so. Well, I mean, there's two things. One of the things that there's like the network warfare idea of John Robb. It seems like it's something else, but yeah, I guess let's focus on the first question, first part of it, where he says, what's an individual to do when the majority of governments are going to adopt their own versions of the Restrict Act? That's the digital ID. That's a central bank digital currency. That's electronic surveillance. It's coming everywhere. So what's an individual to do?
Well, there's not a lot you can do about it, is there, actually? Because if you resist too overtly, they will press charges and put you in a cage. So how do you play that? Now, Charles Knight, an assassin and then a terrorist, is daring and clever enough that he confronts the state more directly. But, how many people are as daring as fictional characters? Not so many.
Not so many. Well, and also you have to wonder if it would make any difference, I mean, but the other thing I think you can do, only thing I can see is that you can opt out of a lot of things. Now it does cost you something if you opt out of the conveniences of life, if you opt, but if you don't like having your biometric access to the to get on your plane, because which are you seeing in the US airports now, when you're leaving, you don't have to show your passport to the gate agent. As you're walking close to it, there's a screen that scans your face and matches it up with your passport and your boarding pass automatically.
Oh, how convenient.
Exactly. So if I don't want to use that, then I don't have to. I cannot fly. It's a big cost to me, but I think this is the ultimate trade-off that people have to, I think, realize and come to terms with. Like, what things are you willing to give up to not participate in that system, and which ones are you not? It's childish to assume that you should be able to have everything that maybe you did have. It used to be that you should be able to forever participate in the system the way the system was designed before, when that system is fundamentally changing underneath us.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I have to get used to a new reality. And as far as not flying, of course you can fly private, which is what the parasites and normal rich people do. But to take a plane across the US, a jet, who wants to fly anything but a jet? It's what, 60 grand from New York to LA or something like that. What do you? I don't know what the current prices are.
It depends on how many seats you're talking.
Yeah, of course.
Talking a G4 or a Learjet,
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. And if you're just flying a Lear, then somebody that's got a Gulfstream 650 kind of rolls his eyes and wonders what's the matter with you? You can't fly. You can't afford to fly a real airplane.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, well, let's see. What's the next one here? Some market commentators, example, Harry Dent, are calling for a steep decline in gold's price down to $1,000 or so before it heads to the moon. What do you say about that?
Well, you know what? If you're going to predict often. And it makes it easy for you to point out the things where you're right and just kind of forget about the things that you're wrong. So I don't know. I've met Harry, but I don't know much about him, or I don't really know much about what he knows, other than I think he's big on demography.
Yep.
Something that chap Peter Zion's kind of stolen his thunder on, quite frankly.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So is gold going down to 1,000? Well, anything's possible. Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's possible. Not likely. In fact, I think it's very unlikely. But thanks for your opinion, Harry. I haven't heard from you for a while.
I will say, if this does happen, Harry's going to be able to say, I called it. I knew this was going to happen for 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Because this is basically all his entire career. It's a version of the same thing. And it's because of the demographic cliff, but that, it just keeps getting pushed out longer. So maybe he's right. I don't know.
Yeah, this is one of the things I don't like about among the many things I don't like about the newsletter business, is that even if somebody has thoughtful, comes up with reasonable opinions, you're supposed to predict stuff. People like predictions from soothsayers. Jean Dixon, or she's been dead for years. I don't know who's they don't have those cheap newspapers in grocery stores anymore, even.
Yeah, tabloids. The tabloids?
Tabloids, right. So I don't know who's cranking out predictions these days, other than copywriters that sit down with a bottle of Jack Daniels and come up with ridiculous shit.
Yeah, I feel like if you're in the, if you are one of these newsletter experts, these finance experts, even if you're like a Jim Cramer, who's constantly making predictions and always wrong, like there's actually there's a Twitter account. I know you're not on Twitter, but there's a Twitter account that's inverse Jim Cramer. And basically whatever it basically, and I think they, so people trade like whatever he says to do. If they say he's long something, they short it. If he likes something, or if he hates something, they buy it, and that record is over the last year much better than his actual record. It's not even close. So I don't remember the numbers, but everybody has their numbers.
Kramer's an entertainer. And back when I was in the newsletter business and a big publisher was publishing my newsletter, they set up a TV special with me and Jim Cramer. And it was a stupid idea because we had absolutely nothing we could talk about. I mean, we were like living in two different worlds. But he's a great entertainer. I mean, I love histrionics and all that type of stuff.
Well, and you basically give him any ticker, top 300 stocks on the US exchanges, and he'll know it. Like, that's a weird little trick he's got. It seems like, people call in and he seems to know. Or maybe that's right. Television. I don't know.
No, he's got talent, but the talent is not picking stocks to go up.
It's entertaining. That's it. That's the talent.
Very
That's
entertaining.
right. Yeah. Okay, let's see. So next question. There's a saying that if you are poor, you should just go to rich countries. And that's really the West at this point. So in order to get wealthy.
It's not a saying, it's what I've been saying for years. If I was a young African, I'd come to the US. If I was a young American, I'd go to Africa. Right. Okay.
Right. So in order to get wealthy, you go there, and then moving to if you already are wealthy, then it makes sense to go to a poor country. Okay. So the question here is, with the accelerating decline of the West, would it still be a target for a smart and educated young person to create some wealth, or is it wiser to focus on developing countries with high potential where you could start building a business for the longer term?
Okay. Listen, if you're fortunate enough to have been born in a rich Western country, like the US, take advantage of that and use it to put together a bit of capital, enough capital. What, I don't know how much capital that might be today, depends on a lot of things. So put your pile of capital together, and then if you want to expand it greatly and hopefully rapidly, albeit with some risk, then go to a really backward third world country. That's what I would do. So you can do both. It's not either or. In that order, though.
Got it. Makes sense. Why does the establishment hate Trump so much?
Well, that's simple. It's because he's a cultural conservative. That's the reason. He likes basic American values. He likes apple pie, Chevrolet, Leave It to Beaver, you know, the America that kind of existed in the 50s and the 60s. And, you know, he's a nationalist, and none of these people, I'm not a nationalist either. I love America, but America's dead. So, but Trump gets confused about all this kind of stuff. And, you know, as a business guy, and he is, well, he's like Kevin O'Leary. They both want to deregulate in some ways that suit them. And they understand California and Massachusetts are screwed. They understand that. So they hate that. So that's the reason. But it's a cultural thing.
Yeah, you know, as you're just saying that, you've said this before, but I started thinking of him as the antithesis of Obama, who the establishment loves and who hated America. You know, would like say bad things about all, you know, wanted to, you know, basically wanted to, you know, sling mud at the American ideal when he would speak. So I think it's the opposite of that.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, Obama is quite interesting. I mean, it shows them how basically good-hearted the average American, whoever he may be at this point, is that, yeah, you elect a, you know, a nice, you know, kind of seemed like an okay, in some ways, just an okay black guy. Let's give the nice black guy a chance. And he screwed up royally. But
I think it was actually the same inclination that elected Obama. It was that same inclination in Americans that elected Trump. It's an anti-establishment inclination. Obama was seen as a dramatic outsider compared to George Bush's crazy shit and McCain and all that, you know. He seemed like, just because he had no resume, I mean, so he's like, well, he's not them. And he talked about war being bad. And so, you know, he's the outsider, bringing in the outsiders. Like, so actually, America, I don't know when they'll realize how duped they get constantly. They get presented with an outsider because, oh, they want an outsider. Let's give an outsider, you know, and that outsider is not an outsider. Is what you find out later. Exactly.
He's the ultimate insider and a pathological liar to boot. Worse than almost any of them. I mean, like, it's like the baby Bush, definitely a liar and, you know, lily-livered and spineless, but not a pathological liar the way, you know,
and not so condescending. You know, that was one of the biggest things with Obama, the condescending conversation all the time.
Absolutely.
Like, I just okay. Next question is, what do you think of Mongolia right now? Or he says, is it better? It was now more than ever the time to be there in Mongolia?
Well, I spent a week in Mongolia. How long ago was that? 20 years ago? And, well, you know, there's not much there. Well, look, Mongolia is the size of Alaska. It's huge. And there's only...
is it Ulaanbaatar?
Yeah, Ulaanbaatar. But I got out into the Gobi Desert and, you know, a bunch of other places. It was interesting. It really was. And slept in yurts and it did that whole thing. You know, did the whole damn thing. And was on a mining trip. And of course, mining trips are I've found one of the best ways to see parts of the world that nobody ever sees. It's like hopping on a freight train is one of the best ways to see the West, because you see parts of the West that you just wouldn't see otherwise from a freight train. Well, why? because nobody goes down to rail yards. You know, they're not the most slavery places in the world. Same thing with mine. Anyway, country the size of Alaska with only 3-4 million people, something like that. So you think the opportunities would be huge, but it's chaotic and they screwed things up. And the answer to the question is, I don't know what's going on in Mongolia right now. Their main source of income is selling coal and for that gigantic coal resources that they sell to China and copper from the Oyu Tolgoi deposit. So that's what they do. And at least
that's where the economic opportunities would all be relating to that. I mean, the population is too small to really, for there to be a lot of interesting economic stuff you could do. Just
well, it would have been one of the places I would have opened up Rick's Cafe American and Ulaanbaatar. That would have been an interesting drill. So it's nice. I'd go to Mongolia. I'd definitely go there if you get a chance. Yes, it's a fun place.
Okay, Mike asks, he says, do you share my optimistic view that parallel societies are indeed forming right now in 2023? Do you believe we can succeed in resisting socialist leaders that are currently using fascist tactics?
Well, we should get Paul Rosenberg back on the show because Paul, as you're probably aware, is one of the leading promoters of parallel societies as being the way to solve the problem. Paul's a perpetual optimist. Regrettably, I'm not.
Yeah, but I would say parallel societies are actually forming now. I mean, the number of people I know in the U.S. who have now buy their meat from from a local person instead of from the grocery store, and that planted garden. I mean, that fundamentally is a parallel society. That alone is right. So that's definitely that's a trend is happening.
It's a great idea. I endorse it completely. No, I think it's a wonderful idea. And if you know a plumber and he knows an electrician who knows a carpenter who knows a gardener and on, and you all get
have more direct, more human relationships is the I think people can overcomplicate the parallel society thing. It's just that instead of ordering on Amazon all the goods I need, I try and get close to the person who's making those goods. I gave you some blueberries from my blueberry guy down here. And they're great. And it's a better story, actually. I like it. And they taste great. So
yeah, they did, actually.
So the second question, though, as a part that maybe where you're less optimistic, which is, do you believe we can succeed in resisting socialist leaders that are currently using fascist tactics?
No, I think people really, we're pack animals, and people like to have a king or a president or a leader. They just like that. They think that's a good idea. And for all I know, maybe it's genetically necessary, something like that. But as I've explained in the past, you don't get the best and the brightest. You get the worst and most corrupt and evil type of people that want to be in those positions. So I don't think the prognosis is very good. But I don't know, what am I missing, Matt?
No, you got it right. I don't think, I think resisting is not the right approach, really. Try and opt out of their systems, I think. But I think, at least in terms of resisting, in terms of fighting them or voting them out or any of that stuff, I just think that those things are all bad ideas, honestly. I don't think they make any difference. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Fighting them is counterproductive. I mean, the most you can do is like Aikido, not karate or something like that.
Exactly. Nothing direct. Yep. Okay. So let's see. I'm going to take a couple questions and ask them together, and then we'll just have one more after that. And that is, So there's a lot of movement right now around the BRICS nations. I mean, a lot of things were announced just within the last week. You had, a direct deal between China and France for LNG. You got a direct deal between Brazil and China. You got, and then there's even within Asia, there's another, it was like Vietnam and Thailand and maybe Cambodia, a couple of other countries that, had a new settlement system that was outside of SWIFT that they had rolled out, and they were just testing it. So all of those things together. And on top of that, last weekend on Fox and CNN, they had segments about the dollar losing its reserve currency status. So what is all this? It is weird that this is all happening the way it is to me, but I mean, we expect this to happen, but what are your thoughts on it? Is it going to happen soon? Is it overblown? What do you think?
Oh, it's definitely going to happen, and it's happening now. And people, I don't know if those reports on the networks mentioned the fact that the major export of the US for many years has not been Boeings and wheat, it's been dollars. Because it's a reserve currency, we just ship out dollars, and there's trillions and trillions of them outside the US. And they're like, a giant, they're going to wash into this country like a tidal wave at some point when people decide to dump dollars. And it's worse than that, actually, because we don't really manufacture that much in the US anymore. China has become the world's workhouse, and other places. So all the US does is financial stuff. The whole economy is financialized in the US, which is basically worthless. It's just, yes, some financial stuff is necessary, of course, but we're looking at something really bad where we don't make anything except for dollars, and people aren't going to want the dollars, and they're finding other places to get real wealth. So, and those dollars are going to come back here, and all those swarthy foreigners are going to buy stuff from Americans, which means that the Americans won't own it anymore. So,
what do you think about, does it surprise you at all with all these announcements, especially ones relating to Saudi, that the US isn't like, I have not even heard any vocal opposition that, anyone in the US apparatus has had towards Saudi, which is basically was like our, proxy, basically. I mean, we would to a great degree be able to completely control the diplomatic relations and the economic relations with them. I mean, the whole Petrodollar thing is based upon an agreement with them. They're violating that directly, and you don't even hear anything about it. Is that strange to you?
Yeah. Hey, I thought they were our BFF.
Yeah, but I mean, even I bet you we have, US. I bet we have Americans right now sitting in Saudi manning the Patriot systems in Saudi Arabia still. You know what I mean? I'm sure they're still there. So like, how's that? Like, if they wanted, they could use leverage, you'd think, to say you can't do it unless you want us to leave.
Well, not only that, I'm sure, I'd like to know how many Americans are there working for Saudi Aramco that are actually doing stuff with drilling for wells and pipelines and all that, because Saudis consider that to be beneath them to work with their hands.
Yeah, right. So, and that's in the high technical work they're not going to bring in the Indonesians for, Yeah. So that's American. So if the US wanted them not to do those deals, if they really wanted it, if it was really important to the US, they could sanction them and make it so Americans can't work there, or like have some penalties for the companies that are doing it or something. I mean, we were like, gloves off with all the sanction stuff with Russia. And it's just considering that this is the essence of the American empire. It's the dollar is the only reason it's existed till now. I'm surprised there's not more of a stink. And it's almost like there's released news about all these little deals that are being happening all the time. Because I mean, honestly, a settlement for one LNG shipment, is totally inconsequential in the grand scheme of things, but it makes the major headline news, everywhere. So I don't know. suspicious as always.
Well, and of course, any LNG that's shipped anywhere, it's not shipped in American boats, because if you're going to land in an American port or go between any two American ports, you got to have an American ship, which we don't create anymore, American crews, which don't exist anymore. So this is just, it's really just a pity. It really is. It's too bad.
Okay, one more question for you. It's kind of a technical one. It's something maybe we could do within the file membership itself, but I think it's worth asking here at least. And the question is, like, when you're looking at a whole portfolio of stocks, just if you imagine, I don't want to go into specifics, but the stocks that you've recommended within the file portfolio, how do people look at which percentage they allocate to each one? You know, I mean, like, is there a mental model someone might have about maybe evaluating the risk of each one and maybe weighing on ones that seem less risky, weighing them, you know, more capital there versus another, or should it be spread out evenly?
Well, we have one or two really big stocks in that portfolio that yield fat dividends. Okay. And then we got some really teeny weeny stocks. So no, you can't put the same amount of money in both of them. That doesn't make any sense. And one pays a dividend and one is a pure spec. And so this is a question where you have to use judgment. And I am not a financial advisor. I'm not a portfolio manager, not interested in those things. These are decisions, as far as I'm concerned, everybody's got to make up for themselves. And
yep,
that's the answer to the question.
Yeah,
all I can say is, I think at this point, the only stocks that I really want to own are those in the resource area.
Yeah.
And we could, I mean,
well, I think what you gave was a framework for how you can have a well-reasoned approach to it, which is just like, what is the risk associated with a stock, what, you know, for this company, you know, just succeeding, just continuing existing compared to another one, you know, a tiny little pico cap stock compared to this gigantic stock, you know, they have a different risk. And then one of them pays a dividend, you know, probably not going to quadruple in price compared to another one. And so there is if you just think it through logically, you should be able to may not have a universal answer, but at least have a comparative answer. You know, if you're looking at 5 stocks in the portfolio, how you could have equal risk distributed across those. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Food for thought. When you answer the question, it might be an opportunity to think about these things, to make this decision for yourself.
Yeah. It reminds me of our conversation we had with Jim Rogers, where he's like, don't invest in anything you don't understand. You know, like that's one thing he says. So if you know, so that's one. So you really got to spend time understanding the stocks you own, and you have to also have a basis, or at least a mental model for how you choose to allocate within each security that you own, that you can defend. To, you know, there's a reason why I have, you know, a lot more allocated toward this company versus another company, because and you can go through the reasons. It's not because somebody gave me a formula, you know, like this, because that otherwise you will get burnt, I think, if you don't have judgment.
I agree. And unfortunately, everybody is looking for that hot stock tip. Everybody's looking for that tout from the horse's.
We couldn't get it out of Jim the other day, that's for sure.
No. Oh, that's right.
A man who knows more about almost everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. Well, Doug, thanks so much. We will be back next week. And one of the things I know we are going to talk about is we're going to talk about Ray Kurzweil and the singularity, and that's kind of the utopian version of it. And then the dystopian version of it is the idea of transhumanism. But it seems like it's coming soon. So we'll talk about that next week.
Yes, that's all we need, is something big that's going to change the world radically and irrevocably and unrecognizably. Yeah. Okay. That's something to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Talk to you next week, Doug. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt.